Well, hello, everyone. Thanks to those of you who are joining us live or maybe listening at some point in the future. You are tuning in for this week's instalment of In the Blender, and we are chatting today with Emma Fraser. So Emma is a true powerhouse when it comes to marketing strategy. She's a global brand strategist, successful in all areas of life except finding that other half. But about 2 years ago, she said, bugger it, I'm going to do it anyway. I will have it all. And she chose at that point to become a single mum by choice. So she embarked on the sperm donor journey just over a year ago, and just over a year ago, Addison was born. Emma writes a blog, Mum is the Boss, and is a great person to talk to on the topic of boardroom to baby, setting up a business when you're pregnant, choosing to be a single mum, or what you can expect when you go down that sperm donor journey. So let's bring in Emma now, and we'll have a chat to her about how she blends business and being a mum. Or do we have you? Well, we might make you the big person, Emma. Hi, Emma. Welcome.
Hi,
Thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me here.
Oh, now I know you are just getting over a bit of an infection, so you're going to be a little bit croaky, but that's okay. For those of you who tried to listen to us on Tuesday, I'm afraid we did have a technical malfunction. And yeah, I hope there weren't a lot of you waiting in the wings to listen to Emma on Tuesday. But we're back. We are back. Emma's just had a power cut at her house, and we almost had to postpone for a second time. But thankfully, we are both connected. So we've got Emma for the next half hour. We're going to have a chat to her about all the interesting aspects of her life. I know her bub is also sick, so we may hear some crying in the background, but it's all those all the elements of blending work and life. So we're used to it as parents. So Emma, I think we'll start with an easy question for you while the people at home, start to prepare their questions. Can you tell us a little bit to begin with about yourself, about your business, and just how you came to be here with us today?
Sure. So I moved back to Perth about a year and a half ago, and that was because I was pregnant, and obviously I needed the support. So my parents are here and a wide network of friends. So I thought it was a good move to move back to Perth. Not from Perth originally, I'm from the UK, but my parents moved here about 20 years ago, so this is home. And whilst I was pregnant, yes, you mentioned that I set up my business. So I run a brand strategy and marketing consultancy, primarily for hospitality, hotels, tourism and travel clients, but we'll work with anybody who is out there to define who their brand is and really how they can take themselves to market. It's something that I've always done. I've always worked in marketing and PR for hotels for the last 20 odd years, and love it. Love what I do, love my clients, and have been able so far to be able to blend that work-life balance after having Addison last year.
Oh, great. And okay, so having Addison, you've given yourself the status of an SMC, which I'd never heard before. Is that something that you invented, or is that a status that actually exists?
It's a status that actually exists. So there is a SMC page or posting site within Facebook, and there's also a website that you can join. I personally haven't joined them because I just haven't. But yeah, it's a single mother by choice. It's for those mothers who choose to go down the journey that I went down and go it alone. Although you're not really alone. Sometimes you're probably sometimes better off because your network of friends and family are there 100%. But yeah, there's a network in Perth as well that they go out to Kings Park and have breakfast and go for picnics and all of that. So there are a few of us out there.
By alone, does it mean that they've all opted to go the sperm donor journey, or they maybe, just for whatever reason have ended up, as a single mum early on, and they've decided that, they're quite capable, which of course we are, and they're going it by themselves?
Oh no, it's very specific. So a single mother by choice.
You must have had a sperm donor. Okay.
Yeah, you have to have had a sperm donor and to be part of the group. You cannot be in a relationship that hasn't been successful and then gone it alone. So
right, there's criteria. Okay.
You've got a tick box that you have to be able to meet.
Exclusive group. Okay, now you mentioned in your blog, Mum is the Boss, that you're socially infertile, and I am curious to know what does socially infertile mean?
Yeah, so that's one that the government really upset me on. So
Oh.
going through IVF, so the journey was quite a long one in terms of the process. So I'll start from the beginning and then I can explain how socially infertile comes about. So I decided when I was about 38, so 3 years ago now, that I was going to do this alone. After all those failed relationships, I thought, bugger this, as you said. I'm not going to find the perfect guy. I'm just going to go it alone. And what is it they say? They say that you bring up a child with a village. And back in Perth, I definitely have that village. So it was a good place to do it. So when I made the decision nearly 3 years ago now, I had to go through a long process. I chose IVF Australia. It depends on where you are doing your IVF or sperm donor or pregnancy journey. Depending on which state, has very different rules. So I was based in Sydney. I was working in Sydney at the time, and I did started my journey obviously there. And the rules there are that your donor can be anonymous. So there is limited information. In WA, however, it's not allowed. It's illegal for the donor to be anonymous, and they have to be involved in the child's life, which is why it's just a slightly longer process in WA, and there are less donors for obvious reasons, because a lot of them just don't want to be known, which I completely understand. Not sure I agree with the rule, but that's what it is. So my journey out of New South Wales was with IVF Australia, and I chose them because I wanted to use a company and a specialist who treated me like a person. It's a big journey to go through, and I wanted to be treated like a person, not just another number in a baby-making factory. So I was very pleased with my decision. I highly recommend my specialists and the team that I went through out of Bondi. And then when you go through your tests, you also have to go through psychological testing. That's more for the child, I think, than it is for me, and financial testing. And just to make sure that you're bringing a child into the world in the right way and that you are mentally sound to be able to cope with this journey before, during, and after. So having gone through all of that.
Yep. No, I was going to say, having gone through all of that, they labelled you socially infertile?
Yes. So you have to fill in these forms, and they ask you why you're doing this alone. And the government don't rebate you if you are on your own, because you're not medically infertile, you're socially infertile, which basically means you didn't find someone, so tough luck on you, and now we're not going to cover it. So you are now socially infertile according to the Australian government terminology.
Oh my goodness.
So, yes, unless you really do have medical issues as you go through the process, but otherwise I'm 100% fertile, which is a good thing in many ways. However, the government sees that as completely unsupportive needs for any help from the government whatsoever. So, yeah, they refer to us not only as SMCs, but socially infertile SMCs.
Oh, lovely. Okay, now I know the people who... Right, I understand. Thank you. Oh, I thought it was something else that you'd come up with, but okay, I've got it now. Now, I'm sure anyone who is listening to this recording at some stage is going to be, mostly interested in this sperm donor journey part. So we should probably move on to that. I guess, how have you found the journey, and can you sort of step us through it from beginning to end in a minute?
Sure. So I literally, as I mentioned, chose my agency, IVF Australia. And the reason for that is because I knew that they had a high level of donations, and they're screened over a 6-month process. You can choose to get them from Seattle in the US as well. So I tried. I thought that might be kind of a different story, and I thought that would add to my story, but there weren't any potential donors that I liked from Seattle at the time. So in good old-fashioned kind of internet dating style, if you refer it to that, you literally get access to a site, so you only have certain timelines. As soon as you make a decision on that donor, you're in your cycle. So you have to be 120% certain that you're ready to go. I had delayed mine previously because I had business trips to LA and holidays booked and all of that. So once I reached the top of the wait list, I then went on to got access to the online registry. Now, I'm IUI, so that means that I am fertile, which meant that I didn't need to go through the IVF process.
Mm-hmm.
And that, again, is an amazing story in itself, and I'm very lucky, but it means that the quality of sperm has to be very high, and therefore there are less donors with a high quality of sperm. So you've got to get a donor with good swimmers. So I went through my RUI list. I did have a profile that I kind of wanted to match, a bit like online dating. You know, the pickings were very slim, but I managed to get someone who was tall, which I wanted because I'm not overly tall, and I thought if I have a boy, that would be an unfair advantage. I wanted someone who was smart and who had similar colouring to me. So I ticked all those boxes. He's also very sporty, which is a good bonus because, again, I'm not very sporty. And I went ahead. And so I had just three to choose from in the end. Mm-hmm. Now, went out for lunch with a group of girlfriends, got very drunk and thought, what am I doing for a moment there? And then we decided on the 2 in the shortlist, and then my parents were heavily involved. So I sent them the link. They had a little look. And then by the Sunday night, I had decided and I had sent off my decision to IVF Australia donor team, and there it was. So I had my baby daddy all ready to go, and I had 6 weeks to get on that journey and fall pregnant, hopefully.
Wow. And how did your friends and family take it?
Yeah, really well. So my parents, well, they got to a point where they were like, you know what, we just want a grandchild. We don't care how you do it. So they were just 100% supportive and loving anyway. Dad a little bit maybe more traditional and thought he wanted me to have that support and have that partner to go on the journey with, but is very, very happy now with Addison. And then my friends around the world, I think probably deep down, being such a career-driven woman, living overseas for 15 years and carving out that career in my 20s and 30s, I think they kind of knew that something like this might happen. So, yeah, they were all very supportive. Some of the husbands, maybe not so, because they just couldn't understand how a guy could donate his sperm and then not know his child, which I totally get. And I think if someone said to me they were going on the journey and I was in a more traditional relationship, I don't know how I would react as well. Mm-hmm. I'd be open-minded, but I'd probably ask the same questions that a lot of friends had asked. But, yeah, overall, immensely supportive. I mentioned earlier it takes a village, and my friends have proven that. They've been around 100% to help me out. I'm very lucky because I have a very easy baby, but it could have gone the other way and I could have needed a lot more help. My parents have been great. So, as I mentioned, I moved back to be with them and for them to be able to help me and bring up Addison as well. So, yeah, they've all been supportive. There's a few question marks in there about how am I going to tell Addison and what's going to happen as she gets older, but I will just deal with that as it comes.
Okay. And I guess, you mentioned having a village in Perth to help you raise Addison. You have lived overseas, London, Dubai, Singapore, interstate in Sydney, and now you've come back to little old Perth. So how is it, I guess, returning back home? You obviously, you need that family support right now, but you think we'll be able to hold on to you for the foreseeable future?
Yeah, because I grew up as an expat kid, and because I have spent a lot of my adult life overseas, and I've had the best time, and I have the best stories, and I would never change
interview.
Exactly, but I would never change a second of any of that. It is lovely to be back in Perth. I go through moments where it is little old Perth, and I get frustrated sometimes at just the most ridiculous of things. But it is nice to be here. I would definitely want Addison to be brought up in Australia rather than going back to the UK, for example. But I wouldn't say no to another expat posting while she's young. But for now, business is picking up. Clients are maybe a little bit few and far between for me because of the industry in Perth. Sydney, very different story. Singapore, very different story. But in Perth, it's a little bit harder for me. But, yeah, for now, for the foreseeable future, I am staying put. And it's quite nice, actually, to have that stability for a little while. It's kind of a new thing for me.
Oh, well, we hope we can keep you. You're a lovely member of the BubDesk community.
Thanks.
You did touch on it briefly before, but I did have a question on whether or not you thought you would tell Addison about this journey as she gets older. Have you sort of swaying one way or the other on that? I mean, she may at some point dig into the Blender archives and find this interview. Once it goes on Facebook, it's there forever.
And part of the psychological testing that I had to go through, I mean, before I'd even gone down that path, I knew that I was ready. I knew how I was going to address it should I ever be lucky enough to have a child. So I had it already planned a long time ago. And the answer to that is yes, she will 100% know where she's come from. I started when I started the journey, so before I even got pregnant, writing a little book, and that takes her through the entire journey that basically I've just spoken about, from woe to go. It also talks about I lost twins in my second pregnancy, so before she was born. So it talks all about that. So I'm going to be 100% transparent with her. I made a decision before I went on the journey with IVF that I would tell everybody. I'm a very open person anyway. I like to share. So I thought I either tell everybody or I tell nobody. And then I thought, but if I don't tell nobody and I suddenly announce I have a baby, then I'm going to get well, who did you have a one-night stand with? And what haven't you told her? So I chose that I would definitely be very open. She will know from day one when she can understand. I can guarantee she'll come home one day and say, why does so-and-so have a daddy and I don't? So I'm very well prepared. We also have a book that a friend of mine bought me, which if anyone out there is going through single parenthood, which I know there are a few in the blender, I don't know if you've got this book, but I highly recommend it. It's called Just the Way We Are, and it talks about different types of families in very many different scenarios. And it's just a really lovely book, and that's one that I read to her now, but I will definitely keep that one aside nice and tidy to bring out if and when she does ask that question.
Yeah, I think I don't know whether or not any of the people we've got watching right now will have some questions for you, but I've got a couple more. But maybe if you are watching at home, if you can have a think, if you've got any questions, and you can start to put them up on the screen for us. And actually, even if you can tell us where you're listening from, I did see a little message from Melissa a second ago that said, "I'm on the train. Should I subject everyone to the podcast?" Because she forgot her headphones. So I don't know if Melissa's online, but we'd love some comments from you on and any questions that you might have. Okay, a couple more from me. We are among friends. Can you tell us how much the sperm donor journey has cost?
That's a very personal question there, Meg.
Well, nothing's off limits, right? That's the deal when you come on this. That's the deal when you come on this show. Nothing's off limits.
No, I don't mind sharing. It's in total, it cost me $26,500.
Okay, but in the scheme of things, it's not that much, right? I don't know how much IVF is, but I bet that's up there.
Exactly,
you have to go
that's
through
the thing.
Several times.
Yeah, so for IUI, obviously I didn't have to pay all those extra costs for IVF, so I was lucky. That would have taken it up to a good 60, 70 grand. It works out to about, it does differ. So please, anyone listening who has been through this, don't judge me or my comments. But in terms of what I went through, it works out to around 6 grand.
Wow. Okay. And if you're not successful each time, another 6 grand. Yeah. Or another 26 grand.
Well, it works out to about between 6 and 9 grand, depending on the drugs, the time it takes, etc.
Okay. So the 26,000 is because you've had a couple of attempts at it to get to a successful outcome. Yeah.
So that was my total investment, was 26 grand. And you've also got to keep in mind as well that, particularly with IUI, because the donor supply is quite low, because you need that high quality, you only get 3 goes. So then you have to go back onto the wait list, and then you have to pay again. So you have to go through the donor selection, because you have to pay a cost for that. There's just additional costs as you go through. But they're very transparent when you start that process. So there was no hidden fees at all in my entire journey.
And I guess the last question from me, for anyone listening at home who is in their 30s or 40s and they are considering going this journey alone, or, whether or not they have it in them, they're very career driven and maybe they've waited a tad too long. Do you have any advice for those people who are contemplating going down the same pathway?
So I do talk about this in my blog, actually, Mum is the Boss, that you mentioned. But my top tips are, if you truly believe that you want this, then go for it. There will be lots and lots of noise around you. There'll be lots of people saying, oh, come on, Emma, you could meet someone next month. You could meet them next year. Why don't you just wait? Are you sure you want to do this? There'll be a lot of that. So you just got to be 100% confident. And you know what? It is a really simple process once you start. And we've all been there. We've all been through pregnancy and all of that. So dealing with that, you would deal with that anyway. I just think my number one advice is, if you want to do it, absolutely do it. Number two would be financially. Make sure you're financially sound, because as we just discussed, it's okay if you fall pregnant, but there's also the question of how much will you invest to keep going and going. And the other side, the emotional part to that is, I think I've spoken to a friend of mine who unfortunately was unsuccessful after a number of rounds. And I said to her, you need to have a cutoff point. You need to know in your mind, is it number 5? Is it number 10? Is it number 20? But you can't continue, because you do put your life on hold. You have to. You're injecting. You're trying to live a healthy lifestyle. You're having to run your life around needles for a while there. So, there's a lot to take into consideration, that you've got to be emotionally ready, financially ready. So obviously being on your own, there is no backup. So I don't have a partner that I can fall onto. I had to set up a business to be able to make this work, because I was just not in an environment corporately that was conducive, as we have all heard of. But it just wasn't conducive to me to be supportive. Oh, there you go. There's a question. I was just about to answer.
There's a question on that, yes. So Susie would like to know whether or not your employers knew about the journey and if they were supportive. So I think they weren't very.
So the short answer is no. Yes, my direct boss was aware, because I wanted to do the right thing and let her know. I was in a very senior position. I was a chief marketing officer, so I was one of her executive leaders in the team. And I wanted to do the right thing and let her know that hopefully in about 9 months' time, I would be going off and having a baby. It was well received as news, and they were very supportive in terms of, this is great news and something that you've always wanted. When it comes to reality, I was in a role that was highly demanding, in a very corporate environment, and one that was also a lot of travel and demands on me. So obviously that was never going to work as a single mum anyway. And I had to think about that. Having gone through the loss of the twins, that was not well received in the business either. They were waiting for me to come back, and I wasn't really ready. And that episode saw me leave that corporate environment, reassess my own value. I think we all need to do that as well as females, is assess our value and worth in the workplace, because without health, we're worth nothing anyway. And that was probably a really good wake-up call. So to answer your question, Susie, no, it was not supportive, and it's a sad reality.
Yeah. Now we've got one question here that has just popped up from Serena, who joined us a little bit late, so she missed the first part, but not actually on the sperm donor journey. She's just curious to know, from in your marketing life, what the most exciting project is that you're working on at the moment.
Yeah, so I'm working with a hotel client at the moment, and they're based over in Sydney, but they have hotels across Australia, New Zealand and Japan. And they have just launched, we just worked through their new website to launch, and their digital journey, so integrating all their social media channels to make sure they're on brand. And I just got news that they'd like to bring me on to what I enjoy most, which is the branding element. So they're going to completely rebrand the business, and I'm hoping that we can get started on that very soon, because that would be very exciting.
Oh, and a bit of travel.
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, well, we don't have any other questions coming through from from our viewers at this point. And I know you've got somewhere to be, and you know, I, the typical blender, am doing this in my lunch break, so I'm supposed to be somewhere too. But thank you very much, Emma, for joining us this morning. I'm sorry that it did take a couple of attempts for me to get my technology to work. I'm going to post this up onto the BubDesk Facebook page, and I'll also put up their contact details for you. So if anyone thinks of a question later, they'll add it to the comments, and I'm sure you'll be checking them. I'll put some details up so that they can read your blog. And, you know, I think it's been a great podcast. Anyone out there, feel free to send Emma some love. Oh, Christina's saying hi. Oh, lovely. Hi, Christina. Serena's saying thanks. I think everyone enjoyed it. It was good fun. I've learned a lot about the sperm donor journey. I don't think personally I'll be going down it myself, but you never know. So we'll leave it there, Emma. Thanks very much. And next week's interview, for those of you who are listening at home, is with Dr. Racina McAlpine, who is the CEO of Win-Win Parenting. She's Sydney-based, and she does a lot of consulting to big companies like Google, HSBC, Red Balloon, around how big companies can support their working families, enabling them to succeed at home so that they can succeed at work. And for anyone who, you know, maybe joined in late, or if you know of anyone who should have been here and wasn't, please feel free to share the links. You can register for the In the Blender reminders on our Facebook page. So I'll bring you back in, Emma, so we can say one final goodbye. There you are. All right. Thank you, Emma. It was really lovely talking to you.
See you. Bye-bye. Have a great day, everyone.
Bye.